Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Great.
We are live on YouTube, and for good measure, I'll record as well.
Awesome. Great. Well, I will now call a meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. Welcome everybody to ANC 1E September General Body Meeting. We had August off, so it's great to see everybody's beautiful faces. A few administrative notes as we get started. Today's meeting is being recorded. Closed caption is available for each user by clicking the button on the toolbar below. Please submit questions through the Q&A function located on the toolbar below. We'll be monitoring it throughout the meeting. If you are calling in rather than participating through the web, you may raise your hand by dialing *9. And with that, I'll now ask Secretary Jacobson to please conduct the roll call.
Thank you, Chair Footer. I will now conduct the roll. Commissioner Gallagher. Commissioner Gallagher is not present today. Commissioner Lancaster.
I'm here.
Commissioner Ray.
Present.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
Commissioner Newland.
Present.
Commissioner Jacobson, that's me, present, and Chair Footer.
Present.
All right, with 6 of 7 seated commissioners in attendance, we have a quorum.
Great, thank you. All right, per DC law, ANC 1E meeting was noticed to the community via listserv, social media, website, and e-calendar. Moving to the approval of the agenda, let me read through it very quickly. We have the consent agenda where we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items. The first one being approval of the July minutes from our general body meeting, approval of 2 reimbursements for myself and Commissioner Jacobson for materials for events coming up in September and October, and a resolution supporting Lamont Cafe's renewal of the liquor license, and then an update or amendment to our SOPs, clarifying methods for announcing public meetings. Then we'll go on to community announcements and presentations. We have 2 of our standing presenters that we will call on, the Mayor's Office of Community Relations and Services, the MOKers, and then the Office of Council Member Brianne Nadeau. Then we'll move on to official business and committee updates, where we have a pretty packed agenda. Start off with Transportation and Public Space Committee, and we have 3 resolutions. Then we will go to Zoning and Economic Development Committee. Commissioner Gallagher is not with us tonight, so Commissioner Ray will take the first 3 resolutions, which are report out from the committee activities. And then we have 2 settlement agreements, one for Medusa Lounge and another one for W&S Liquor and Deli. And then we'll go to Public Safety and Engagement Committee, where we have 2 applications, one for sponsorship and one for a grant. And then we will turn it over to Treasurer Ray to go through 2 items regarding ANC 1E's budget. So with that, I will ask if anybody has any additions or amendments to the agenda for this evening. Commissioner Ray.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just noticing this, but it's Lamont Market, not Lamont Cafe. In your
In the
consent agenda, in the consent agenda. That's it.
This one, is that their official name? Because I pulled this directly from their application.
Oh, then I could be wrong. Yeah, they market themselves as Lamont Market, but it could be that way on the thing. Sorry.
And it's also it's not going to be a resolution, but a support letter, unless Commissioner Lancaster has a resolution.
No, I fully support the renewal of liquor license. I'm actually going to write a letter of support
And Commissioner Ray, I'll double check that just to make sure, but I remember pulling this directly from the notice. Thank you for that. Commissioner Jacobson.
Thank you, Chair Footer. Just to note, the OUC resolution didn't actually come from the Transportation and Public Safety Commission or Committee. And it might make more sense to put that in with the Public Safety and Engagement, even though it wasn't heard by that committee either. So I don't know where exactly we want to put it on the agenda, but.
Yeah, we can do that. That makes sense.
Apologies for ruining your number scheme that you had perfected for the agenda.
That is no problem. All right. Any other adjustments? All right, thank you, everybody. Hearing none, I will now accept a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
I make a motion with unanimous consent to adopt the agenda.
Thank you. Any dissent? Hearing none, the motion passes and the agenda is approved. Now we will move to the consent agenda. Just a reminder, all matters listed under the consent are considered by the commission to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. Any commissioner may, however, remove an item from the consent agenda by request. I listed out what was in the consent agenda earlier, so I won't do that again. Are there any items that commissioners wish to remove from the consent agenda? Move to official business for further discussion. Hearing none, I'll now accept a motion to adopt the consent agenda.
I make a motion with unanimous consent to adopt the consent agenda as written.
Thank you. Any dissent? Right. Hearing none, the motion passes and all the matters listed are adopted. Moving right along, team. I love it. Next, we will go to community announcements. Commissioners and members of the community can use this time to make public announcements, distribute information, or alert the community about issues. For members of the public, if you are here to discuss any item listed under official business, please hold your comments until we get to that item on the agenda. We'll start with commissioners, then move to the MOKers, and then to the representative from Councilmember Brianna Doe's office, then members of the public. All speakers have 3 minutes. For members of the public, please indicate you would like to speak by raising your hand and using the button on the toolbar. If you're calling in rather than participating online, you may raise your hand by dialing *9. I'll call on members of the public in the order in which they are received. All right, starting with commissioners, I see Commissioner Ray.
Good evening. Maybe I'm stealing other people's thunder here, but I did the announcement last month about open streets, so I'll start off by doing an announcement about open streets. Saturday, October 7th, starting at 9 a.m., going until 3 p.m. will be Georgia Avenue open streets. Many of us have seen this event before. It is a great day to get out. Hopefully it won't rain. They will be closing off the streets and removing cars from Georgia Avenue probably overnight. So do pay attention to any postings you'll see along the roadway there. And as many are aware, they'll be closing the streets that intersect with Georgia Avenue as well. So you won't be able to cross Georgia between Berry Place, which starts here in 1E and goes all the way up to Missouri up in Ward 4. So do pay attention. Again, October the 7th, Saturday. So thank you very much and enjoy the day.
Thank you. And I'll just add to that, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And we just learned that they are going to be giving away 170 bicycles. And in order to participate in this raffle, please go to openstreets.dc.gov to fill out a form. Again, if you go to Open Streets, and Streets has an S at the end, so it's plural, openstreets.dc.gov, and you go to upcoming events, you'll find the Georgia Avenue Open Streets information on there, and there's a link in there to fill out the form. Awesome. All right, Commissioner Jacobson.
Thank you, Commissioner Footer and Commissioner Ray, for mentioning Open Streets. I also want to mention that the 700 to 900 block of Euclid in front of School Without Walls, Francis Stevens, will be having a block party during Open Streets from roughly noon to 3. There are plans for some kid events, so chalking, jump rope, things of that nature. And then there'll also be long games. So anyone from the community is welcome to just come and enjoy the street. Thank you.
Thank you. Other commissioners? Commissioner Lancaster, I know that you mentioned previously that you might want to take a moment to announce some events that you are having in your neighborhood. I'm not sure if you are on mute or not, but I wanted to just make sure you had the opportunity if this is the time. All right, well, we can come back to you if you have any announcements. I do have one. I just want to provide an update. So over the past couple of weeks, I've been working with ANC 1B and ANC 5E on different updates that we can be making to the playground, baseball field, and basketball court around the old Casey Lewis School located at Bryant and 2nd Street. We've been working with DPR and DC Water, been having great conversations, and we are about to get ready to release a public survey asking for ideas and how to use the space. Specifically, the opportunity for potential community garden, maybe a pickleball court, and other things. So we'll be distributing that survey, and if anybody has any questions about that area, which is in my SMD, please reach out to me. Happy to discuss it further with people, but it's a great opportunity. It's a great space to try and engage people from across wards 1 and 5. All right. Any other announcements from commissioners? All right. Well, we will go next to the Mayor's Office of Community Relations and Services, and Portia Foreman. And I will bring up, or does somebody bring Portia up?
Good evening, commissioners. Can you hear me?
Hello, yes.
Hi. Okay, so I have just one announcement, and that was just to remind everyone that DC Art All Night is activated from September 29th to the 30th, from 7 p.m. until 3 a.m. If anyone was interested in locations, Shaw activated U Street and Mount Pleasant. That's all from the mayor's office. I'll stick around for the rest of the meeting. If anyone have any questions or concerns that they need to bring to my attention, I'll be here in the meeting.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, any questions for Ms. Foreman?
I didn't realize that my camera was off. Oh, I can't turn the camera on. Okay.
Commissioner Jacobson.
I'm sorry, I think you might have broke up for me. Can you clarify what's happening on the 29th and 30th?
Oh, so DC Art All Night.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. There are no other questions. Thank you very much, Portia. And we will move over to a representative from Council Member Brianna Doe's office, and we have Nicole Rivara.
All right, can folks hear me?
Yes.
Great.
Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Nicole Rivera. I'm the council member's chief of staff. It's great to be here and see you all. Just a few quick updates from our office. I have a few, so I'll go through them pretty quickly, but happy to answer any questions. Of course, public safety is very top of mind for the council member always, but especially in recent months. So just wanted to share a few quick things because the new fiscal year does start October 1. So quite a few investments around the city going into effect on October 1, but in particular, I know the public safety investments are very top of mind for folks. There's a number of initiatives in Ward 1 that'll kick off in the coming weeks. Those include safety ambassadors in Adams Morgan, new violence interrupters in the 14th and V areas, more funds for violence interrupter efforts in LaDroit Park, Columbia Heights, and Parkview, targeted substance use outreach along U Street, Lower Georgia Avenue, and Mount Pleasant, a pilot program for substance use and behavioral health services in the 600 block of T Street. And then we also have a mechanism to fund a bid-like entity in the U Street area. There's a sobering center coming to Columbia Heights this year, which is really huge. And then also just more generally, the council member is in frequent conversation with MPD commanders in the 3rd and 4th districts and with the chief, really encouraging her to allocate officers to the areas with the highest rates of crime. This really sounds like a no-brainer, but it's not really how officers are distributed around the city right now. So really pushing for that to get some more resources where we need it in Ward 1. We are doing a lot on traffic safety and enforcement. We've got 4 bills coming up in October at a joint hearing of our committee, Public Works and Operations, and the Transportation and Environment Committee, which is chaired by Councilmember Allen. Parking enforcement falls under the council members committee and plays a really important part of traffic safety. Her bill focuses on fake tags and expired temp tags. This is something we hear from folks about a lot. And something that's really hard to enforce for a variety of reasons. So the bill would give DPW and other enforcement agencies authority to immediately tow and impound cars whose owners have blatantly flouted the law by having clearly counterfeit, obscured, or long expired plates. Under current law, even a vehicle with no license plates can't be towed unless it has 2 or more unpaid tickets. So we're trying to close that gap. And the bill also empowers DC government to really proactively investigate and shut down dealers and distributors of false and counterfeit temp tags. It would classify that as an act of forgery. And we've also added close to 40 parking enforcement, booting, and towing positions to the budget to really enhance the parking enforcement we're able to do around the city.
Thank you very much. Anything? I'm sorry, I cut you off there just because we're at 3 minutes. But was there anything last thing you wanted to add?
Yeah, just we're working on a bunch of stuff to make trash work better. We've got a public hearing in October if folks want to testify. We're also working on a bill to end solitary confinement in the city. And I'm going to stick around for the rest of the meeting and happy to answer any questions. And folks can always reach out to our office for anything they need. Thank you.
Awesome. Stick with us. I see Commissioner raise a question, then I have a question as well. Commissioner Ray.
Thank you. And Nicole, thanks for coming tonight. 2 things that are generally unrelated, but I wanted to point out because during the budget season, we had the then director of the ONE's office, the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, come, and she was in the process at the time of looking at the violence interrupter programs to see where they made sense and where they would make changes. And certainly I asked specifically about Parkview. I know she's no longer in that role. Unfortunately, she passed. But I assume that office is looking at those things still. And it might be a good idea if the council member's office could find out where they are with that.
Sure. Yeah, happy to look into that. I know the council member is regularly in touch with that office, but happy to touch base and get you some more info.
Thank you. And then on the other unrelated is when you mentioned the making trash work better, is this the potential pilot program for having general area where, like a place where people brought all of their trash to one centralized location on a block? Is that what you're referring to?
That is one of them. There's like 4 bills coming up from us and from a few other council members. But yes, the pilot program for communal trash is one of them for blocks where trash pickup is out front.
Yeah.
And cans really get in the way. So, yep.
All right, because that's certainly something maybe we can comment. You've probably noticed the same thing. If the trash cans are out front, it's a total disaster.
Yep.
So those would certainly be good blocks, and happy to make that comment publicly from the ANC. Thank you.
Great. We'll send info as soon as we have a little bit more to share.
Thanks.
I wanted to just ask you about the bid funding. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what the plan is with that? Who's going to be, I guess, are you guys looking for a contractor? Like, what exactly is it funding?
Sure. So we're still really early stages with that. We're really, looking at some other areas as a model, but what kicks in for this year is funding to set up the funding mechanism. So we're going to use a performance parking model in the U Street area to fund the entity. And so in this budget, that money will go to set up that system, and then we'll go from there in the planning and implementation. So we're still very early stages in setting that up, and happy to continue to share info with you all as we move forward with that.
Yeah, I personally am very interested and invested in that, and have talked to a number of businesses, including 930 Club and others. I know that Jean's on the attendee, or one of the attendees here tonight, about a bid-like structure, and there's a lot of interest around it.
Yes.
And I know that's been there for a number of years, and it's been a bit exacerbated or come back to light due to some of the crime and trash that's been prevalent, particularly on the U Street, the eastern side of the U Street corridor. So please, I would really like to participate in all of that. If you guys are starting to have conversations and figuring out how the community is being involved, please let me know. I want to be a part of it. I've also been engaging with the mayor's office, particularly Sala from the nightlife office, to see what they're also doing. So I know there are a number of different things that are going on.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we'll keep you updated. Absolutely. It'd be great to have your input.
Yes. All right. And Commissioner Jacobson.
First, just wanted to say thanks to the council member for all the work that's being done on traffic safety. I have a question more specifically around DPW and feedback mechanisms. So I have a particular vehicle in my SMD that has a temporary tag that's been expired for more than 6 months. This person regularly speeds through neighborhoods. I mean, you can just see the tickets that they're racking up.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever that vehicle is reported to DPW, they come through and fine them for not having a Ward 1 parking sticker,
Mm-hmm.
which I mean is technically true, but the vehicle's been eligible for booting and towing for more than 3 or 4 months at this point.
Okay.
So is there any like good feedback mechanism in situations like that? Should we just flag that for the office, or is that like a training point for DPW? And
Yeah,
happy to take some of
so-
this offline.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can connect separately, but feel free, anyone, to flag that for our office. And we're also tracking it for our overall oversight. So we can both address the single issue, but also, kind of the big picture of how this is being handled. Ariel in our office handles all of the DPW issues on the legislative side. So very helpful to flag for our office for the big picture and the immediate resolution of that particular issue. So I will send you a note separately and we can get it taken care of.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for Nicole? All right, none. Nicole, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Great. Thanks for having me.
All right, members of the public, the community, if anybody's interested in providing a comment, please raise your hand and I will call on you. Again, if you are calling in rather than participating via the web, you can dial *9 to raise your hand. Right. Being none, we will move to official business. All right. The official business is organized into our 3 standing committees, and then we have a couple of official administrative matters at the end that Treasurer Ray will address. So the committee chairs will begin by providing a brief update of their committees, activities for August, and then we will walk through each item of business and have 5 minutes per item to present. They'll take questions from commissioners, and audience members until a motion is proposed. The first item, our first committee that we will go to is Transportation and Public Space, and I will recognize Commissioner Jacobson.
Thank you, Chair Footer. Just overall for the committee, we heard from we heard a few resolutions that we'll discuss in just a little bit. We also heard a presentation on Open Streets Georgia Avenue, which is coming up, like Commissioner Ray spoke about, and also talked with the development team for the East Towers project at Howard. Had some feedback for them around traffic safety in the area, and they're going to take that feedback from us in 1B and talk to DDOT and go from there, and we'll likely hear them again later this year. And then beyond that, we can jump into the two resolutions that I have listed here, sorry. So the first one is a resolution approving testimony concerning the 4 bills that we just heard about to improve safety-focused traffic enforcement. And Chair Footer, did you want me to, oh, you're presenting it, never mind, perfect. So I made a few adjustments today if folks had read through this previously, but at a high level, these are the 4 bills that, like I said, we just heard about, and these are our comments on those bills. So at the beginning, I talk a lot about how these bills are a great step. Ideally, we would have our streets, we would have the issues with street safety be addressed through traffic calming, so designing roads to make them safer. And then we also call out that the use of fixed fines and fees disproportionately harm families of color. And ideally, we would be reforming the fine structures in DC so that there would either be lower fines for folks with limited means or creating a progressive fine structure. Though we are generally more in favor of a points-based system than a fine-based system. And further on, talking from there, we talk about the License Suspension Reform Amendment Act, stating that we endorse the bill overall, but we would like an additional provision to include the suspension of driver's license for drivers who commit moving violations and then injure a vulnerable road user or pedestrian. We would also like to see the removal of driving privileges after 1 DUI conviction, given the dangers just a single instance of driving under the influence can provide to the community. From there, we talk about the ATE Effectiveness Amendment Act. So this is adjusting a lot of the pieces around ATEs. Right now, the point penalty for ATEs is nothing. This bill would amend it to be 1 point for going 11 miles or above and being caught by an ATE, and then an additional point for violations in school zones. The point I put in here is to have that point penalty scale. So assess 1 point for 11 to 15, 2 for 16 to 20, and 3 for 21 plus, with the additional point for violations in school zones because of the danger to children. There's also a lot of research around vehicles with higher front ends and how they're more likely to injure and kill people who are hit by them because the force from those vehicles are concentrated on the chest and the head rather than the lower body. And your heart being hit or your brain being hit are much more dangerous and much more likely to kill you. And these higher front ends make it more difficult for drivers to see people, especially children, in front of those vehicles. And so since these vehicles pose a greater risk to pedestrians, I want to send a message that drivers of these vehicles need to operate them much more carefully than the average vehicle, and that the points that we mentioned in the previous paragraph be doubled when they're committed by vehicles with hoods that are 4 feet off the ground or higher. I should probably mention, yeah, I guess on that second bullet point, if you could just say 4 feet off the ground or higher at the end of the paragraph. There's also a piece in the bill about presuming that the owner of a vehicle is the operator whenever an infraction is issued by an ATE camera, unless that owner proves otherwise. And this paragraph is to say we support that presumption, just because a vehicle owner allowing others to drive their vehicles carries risks, and they're choosing to accept that risk whenever they let someone else drive it. Number 4, if an ATE camera is generating a lot of revenue, it likely means that there are opportunities to improve traffic safety that are being ignored. And so asking that we require that the 5 cameras with the most revenue generated have those funds earmarked for street safety projects. Happy to strike that. Not sure how folks are feeling about that particular one. Also understanding the importance of quick feedback mechanisms to remind drivers of the dangers that they're causing by speeding. And so urge the council to include provisions to have tickets for moving violations captured by ATEs to be mailed within 1 business day, because currently it can take upwards of 1 or 2 weeks and folks will probably forget about what they did, to be honest. And the last piece is requiring the tracking and reporting of revenue collected via towing or immobilization enforcement against vehicles targeted by the ATE Effectiveness Amendment Act. Because right now that revenue is not reported, and it makes it look like the booting and towing that DPW does is actually costly to the government, which makes it more difficult for them to fund additional positions. When the fact of the matter is that they likely drive more revenue because they're catching more vehicles. I appreciate everyone's patience. This is a long one. For the STEER Act, asking for a provision requiring DPW to have an enforcement program on the weekend. I know I've talked to a couple of folks about this one. Happy to strike it, given that this might not be the most effective use of resources for the enforcement program that we have. And then the second piece is requiring DPW to create partnerships with the private sector to boot and tow dangerous vehicles. And so DPW could share the list of boot and tow eligible vehicles with these private sector entities to reduce opportunities for abuse. And so they can give a prioritized list of some number of vehicles that are already eligible so that it's less likely to be abused. And then the last one is the Fraudulent Vehicle Tag Enforcement Amendment Act of 2023, including obscure tags as an offense that allows a vehicle to be booted or towed immediately, because if you have an obscure tag, you also can't be caught by ATEs. And so it's not any different than having an expired tag or a fraudulent tag. Allow private entities to do some of the work here as well. So for example, being able to boot and tow tags that have been expired for more than 60 days. And had heard feedback that, it's pretty well known that if you use a car cover on your vehicle, you can pretty much park wherever you want in the city without any risk of enforcement, because DPW doesn't want to deal with that. And so we ask that DPW be allowed to investigate these covered vehicles for parking violations. And then I wanted to end it on a more personal note, because it's what drives a lot of what I do with street safety, and just talking about how I lost my brother in a car crash 7 years ago this October, and just worried about hearing the same for another family member or friend. So appreciate everyone listening to that. I think I was under 5 minutes. Sorry if I was not. Any questions or comments?
Do you have 2 questions? But before I go, thank you, Josh, for not only putting this whole thing together, but also for sharing your personal story and what kind of motivates you. And sorry to hear about your loss, and honored that you feel comfortable to kind of share that information with us. Team questions? I see it. Commissioner Brown.
I'm so sorry. I did not find raising hand emoji. Thank you so much, Commissioner Jacobson, for putting this together. I know that it took a lot of research and time to be thoughtful about these recommendations in your testimony. And I'm so sorry to hear about the tragic loss of your brother. It's very sad, and my heart goes out to you. I know we've gone back and forth prior about kind of my concerns on the issue of fines and fees, and just wanted to, thank you so much for lifting this up in that testimony. I think the messaging is going to be very important for this commission as we kind of think about how we approach traffic safety, because there's been a lot of research done also on fines and fees. I think that definitely it could be a mechanism to improve traffic safety, but only for those who really can afford them. I think that there's just a difference between someone who is making $30,000 annually, or wage earning folks who are trying to navigate the city, versus, someone who makes six figures annually. I think there's just two concerns. I do agree with a lot of the things in here, and thank you for making those adjustments. But the two ones, that concern me are, one, how we're approaching the point penalty system for moving vehicles. I had said this earlier and raised it before the commission, but I would really love for us to focus more on speed that's connected to reckless driving, because there's just a difference between, going like 10 miles over the speed limit versus 30, and speed that leads to bodily injury or harm. And I'd love for us to kind of think about that a little bit more, because the point system can be punitive. So if you have points to your driver's license, I love how the district can make you eligible for things like going back to get your driver's license classes, so that you can improve how you drive as a way to change behavior. But I think for me, when a license gets suspended over, going 10 miles over the speed limit, that could be, something that's done for the average individual who's driving. But for me, is more about reckless driving, those that are connected to DUIs, those that have excessive issues with speed, and changing behavior around that. And the other one is just the focus on the type of vehicle. I definitely understand that larger vehicles can kind of create more harm and damage if you hit someone. But I would just like for our message just to focus on just any car, right? Any car can do that. You're speeding, there's reckless driving that's happening, you shouldn't be doing it. And I think that there could be just other ways where we can kind of message the focus on traffic safety and how we change that behavior. So I was just, those two things kind of stood out to me that seemed very punitive. And I'd like for us to kind of like focus on those that have like reckless driving behavior. So I'll just say that.
Yeah, I guess yeah, definitely appreciate the concern, Commissioner Brown. I guess to me, I truly think going 10 miles over the speed limit in parts of the city is an example of reckless driving. So for example, the speed limit on Euclid is 25 miles an hour. There's a school there with a lot of young children. If a car hits one of those young children and they're going 25 miles an hour, the risk of that children dying is roughly 10%. If that car is going 11 miles over the speed limit and going 36 miles an hour, the risk of that child dying goes up to 25%. And if that car is additionally a taller vehicle with a taller front end, the risk of death increases. And so I get where you're coming from, but I think we might disagree on ultimately what is reckless and what we find acceptable in the normal course of driving throughout the city.
Thank you. And I just included the link in the chat on the laws around reckless driving and the definition of that.
Yeah, to that point, Commissioner Jacobson, is there I'm sure there's some science or studies out there that kind of support that 10 miles an hour is the beginning of where it either becomes reckless or something along those lines. Is there anything you can outline that kind of helped you write it this way?
Yeah, I guess I appreciate there might be a specific code definition for reckless. The reason that I have it scaling here is if you are pulled over by a police officer, the points scale currently. And so I guess I worry about a scenario where we're ultimately punishing people more if they're pulled over by a police officer than if they get a ticket from a speed camera. And so that's part of the reason why I put that in there. And honestly, it's much worse if you are pulled over by a police officer. I can't remember the exact figures, but I think it's 3 or 4 points if you're going more than 15 miles an hour over the speed limit. And I see that Commissioner Ray has a question. So maybe while I grab that exact detail, we can go to him.
Sure, Commissioner Ray.
Thank you. In fact, I was going to remind Commissioner Jacobson that one of the reasons that this provision made it in was because we already have a similar provision in when you are pulled over by a police officer. But you just said that. The only other thing I would look at, though, if you're still planning to tweak this, is whether or not it could be, and I hate to say it this way, but percentage based. I mean, if you're going 10 miles and over the speed limit in a 20-mile-an-hour zone, well, you've increased the speed by 50. You've increased the speed significantly. So I do think that even 10 in certain areas is reckless. You certainly wouldn't want to go through the close residential neighborhoods at those speeds. That's why we have the bumps. We've been able to get those installed in a lot of places to help bring those speeds down. But this is the sort of thing that while at a hearing, you could have a discussion and talk to. So I'm fine with leaving it in even the way you have it. And then secondly, on the size of vehicles, and again, as part of that discussion, it might be weight-based versus height-based. Certainly, if you're driving a vehicle that's over 3 tons versus 1.5, it's going to be a harder impact. It's going to have a higher impact on pedestrians. So I'm also fine with having some sort of discussion about having a gradient when we're driving a larger vehicle. If you've been given the keys to a salt truck, you need to know how to drive that. And if you're being reckless with that, you're being much more reckless than if you're doing it in a smaller vehicle. So, these are the kind of discussions that we need to have, particularly when at the federal level, NHTSA and the others are doing very little to get manufacturers to think about how size is impacting pedestrian safety. Pedestrian safety, killed pedestrians are going up all over the United States, and it's because vehicles are getting larger. People are buying larger SUVs, larger trucks, and then driving them pretty much everywhere, whereas they used to drive much smaller vehicles. And so that is driving nationally the trend that we're seeing. So these are discussions I think cities are going to have while we're not getting enough recognition of it at the federal level. So thanks.
Commissioner Jacobson, we'll come back to you.
Yeah, I guess just to give more context on the points, I was just looking up the current point system chart. So right in here, I'm saying 1 point for 11 to 15 miles over the speed limit, 2 for 16 to 20. Some other example, like right now for the point system, it is 3 if you're going 11 to 15, 4 if you're going 16 to 20, and 5 if you're going 21 plus. So this is honestly like a little bit nicer than the existing point system if it's an ATE rather than an officer pulling you over. And then in terms of other things that can give you points, that 3 points for the 21 plus miles per hour. You can get 3 points for failing to wear a seatbelt. You can get 2 points for operating a vehicle with a license expired less than 90 days. You can get, or is it 3 points for failing to give a right of way to a pedestrian, which happens all the time. So I don't think like in the end, this is that punitive compared to the existing point system if you are stopped by a police officer.
Commissioner Newland.
I don't mean to belabor this. Thank you, Commissioner Jacobson, for putting this together, but just one minor addendum, I think, on Commissioner Ray's point on the difference of the height and weight. I would just point out that electric vehicles have significantly more weight because of the batteries, but might be worth looking at which is more impactful, the weight of the car or the height. So we're disincentivizing people from driving like a sedan that's electric and good for the environment versus something that is higher off the ground and might have more impact. So I guess just differentiating between the two. That's all.
Commissioner Brown?
So back to the point about the first point about the point penalty system. Are we asking, you're asking to increase the point penalty for each vote? Are you trying to scale back or are you trying to increase what is already in law?
So currently in law, there are no points assessed for moving violations caught by an ATE. The proposal in the ATE Effectiveness Amendment Act as written is to assess 1 point no matter the speed if you're going 11 miles or above. So 1 point for 11 to 15, 1 for 16 to 20, and so on. The other, I'm trying not to say point here, but the other thing I was mentioning is that if you look at the current point system chart, it already scales and it's already more aggressive than this. But those points are only incurred if you're pulled over by a police officer.
Mm-hmm. I see.
I have two quick things. This one business day, while that sounds really great, do we have any idea or inclination of the process that they currently use and if it's something that can be improved upon? I mean, UPS alone, even if it's intercity mail, is more than a day.
Yeah, I was trying not to say that they are required to get to 1 day, maybe include provisions to determine necessary process improvements to reduce the time it takes to mail them out. I don't know. I was just trying to give like a marker to set some sort of line in the sand for the council to think about.
Okay. And then the DPW enforcement piece. I have no problem with this being in here, and thank you for thinking about it, but did you have an opportunity to connect with the director of enforcement at DPW and ask him about the stats and the rationale behind their program? Because he does have a really interesting conversation or point to why they do it the way that they do it.
Yeah, I didn't have the chance to, and that's why I'm okay with removing it, just because I think there are enough other good points in here. And in a perfect world, I would see this, but I don't have enough knowledge to say that this is actually significantly important, given I assume that they also have challenges in hiring enough staff and all that. And yeah.
I might say kind of what Commissioner Ray was saying earlier around, leaving it in as an opportunity to have a conversation around it. Maybe it's a good idea to keep this in here so that there is a conversation or asking questions specifically around why they do it this way, because it might be a really interesting thing to educate the community on why it's this way, and it might stimulate a conversation to brainstorm ways to improve upon it. So no problem with keeping it in, just wanted to see if you had that opportunity.
Totally fair. Appreciate that.
Commissioner Brown, your hand is raised. Do you have another question? Yeah, go ahead.
Not a question, but just a recommendation. And this kind of goes to my point about reckless driving, because there is a definition on that. And I would like for us to kind of stick to what is currently in law when we talk about it. But I would love for this, like that to be elevated somewhere in this testimony, because from my perspective, it's just the reckless driving is problematic. And I also would love if we could just, have a space where we could talk about traffic calming, because for me, like that ultimately is the comprehensive approach towards our transportation agenda that addresses speed. We could talk about changing behavior and how people, how we approach changing behavior on that. And there's the point system and, and fees connected to that. But I would love for us to kind of elevate that even more. So those are the like burning things for me.
That's fair. To the reckless driving point, the existing point system chart gives 6 points for reckless driving. I mean, I'm happy to toss that in there too for ATEs, or if you have some other number or how you want to define that in there.
Maybe just the messaging of it. I think for me, it's just the messaging of it that we just need to find a solution to address reckless driving. And, I don't know if these kind of recommendations get us there. But hoping that, yeah.
And just a point of clarification, I 100% agree with you, Commissioner Brown. I guess, Josh, the reason that it's worded this way is that the scope of this act is only talking about ATEs.
I get that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess the ATE, well, so one of the pieces is going 30 miles an hour above the stated speed limit, so an ATE could capture that. And the other pieces wouldn't necessarily be ATEs because it's causing bodily harm or permanent disability or disfigurement to another, or causing property damage in excess of $1,000.
Yeah, but there's also just the speed limit piece of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have specific wording you'd like to put in there? I'm happy with.
Yeah, let's connect.
Okay. Yeah, I guess, do you want to just put like a placeholder bullet point for reckless driving, Commissioner Footer?
Right.
And I do not know how long I am allowed to testify for yet. They have not announced that yet. So I might have to move some of these into an addendum if I assume folks are roughly okay with that, but I will make sure to at least include reckless driving in the testimony. And then I think I cover the traffic calming in the first bullet point, but curious if you have other feedback sorry, not the first bullet point, the first, yeah, right there. Ideally, our streets would be made safer through additional traffic calming measures that make it physically and cognitively difficult to speed. However, we note this is a longer term project, so we appreciate the measures the council has introduced.
All right. I am going to move things along because we're almost at 8 o'clock, and we do have some members of the community who have some questions as well. So last call, any other questions or comments? All right. So moving over to the community, I see that we have Allie B with her hand up. I'm going to promote you now. All right, Allie B, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you all hear me?
Yes. Please.
So I just wanted to kind of speak on these amendments. Basically, I'm a member of the community. I live off Sherman and Kenyon. I've lived here for about a year, but I have lived in the Ward 1 area for about approaching 3 years now, I guess, and DC for longer than that, but just, context. And I just want to kind of talk in support of increasing these penalties for, I know we've kind of going back and forth and calling it reckless driving or not, but I do believe it personally to be kind of reckless driving. People have kind of talked about the statistics already about how, vehicle hitting a person at 15 miles per hour is not likely to be deadly, but as soon as you get to around 25 miles per hour, that rate of death really jumps a lot. As well as, not even mentioning injuries or anything like that. Vehicle height and weight are also important things to note. I am almost 6 feet tall. I'm a pretty big person, and every single day when I'm walking around or riding a bike in my neighborhood, I see vehicles that are probably not taller than me, but approaching it, cars that would not be able to see me if I was standing in front of them. And like I said, I'm a very, very tall person, and that really concerns me as a member of the community and as someone who lives next door to a elementary school. Every single day I see people speeding as kids are trying to get to or leave school. And it just really, really concerns me and makes me worry about the members of my community and how people who do not walk or, or do not drive or are treated by the city and how their safety is not necessarily, taken seriously. Sorry, losing my train of thought a little bit. There's a lot of information here. Props to Commissioner Jacobson for doing a great job on all this. And I also just kind of wanted to speak to the usefulness of ATEs. I know that they get a lot of criticism as revenue creation for the city, which is why I think the point that you made for earmarking the money for safety improvements and traffic calming is a great one. Seeing as people have talked about, traffic calming is really the ultimate solution to these issues we've discussed. And just kind of before I end this here, one more note on ATEs and their effectiveness. A study from the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration conducted or looked at 28 studies about automated enforcement in the US and found a reduction of 8 to 49% for all crashes and a reduction of 11 to 44% of crashes related to serious injuries and fatalities when using ATEs. I also think it is great that the automatic enforcement reduces my community's interactions with the police, which can often end extremely badly for individuals. So I wanted to speak in favor of these amendments, and thank you for letting me share my thoughts.
Thank you, Allie. Other members of the community, if you are interested in making a comment or asking a question with respect to the resolution before us, please raise your hand. Again, if you are calling in rather than joining us via web, you can dial *9 to raise your hand. All right. Seeing none, I will come back. I'll now accept a motion with respect to the resolution before us. The resolution approving testimony concerning 4 bills to improve safety-focused traffic enforcement. Is there a motion?
I motion that we approve the text as written.
Is there a second?
Second. Oh, sorry.
No, thank you, Commissioner.
All right, the motion is moved and seconded. All those in favor of adopting the resolution signify by saying aye. Or
Aye.
raise your hand. Thank you.
Aye.
All right. All those opposed signify by saying nay or raise your hand. Any abstentions? All right. With 6 votes in favor and 0 votes opposed, the motion passes and the resolution is adopted. All right, Josh, we can now move to your next resolution, which
Yes,
we moved the OUC one down, so now we're on to the schools.
Yep, number 3. This one should be pretty quick. Short version of it is we passed a resolution back in April to ask the pickup and drop-off zone for School Without Walls, Francis Stevens. They have buses that park along the side of the school to pick up the students. There was not enough space for those buses to park there. A lot of students had to weave in and out of parked cars to get to their school bus. And there are a lot of people that try to speed around the school bus who are driving because they're frustrated by school buses being parked in the middle of the road. It's a danger to children. Fast forward to a month ago, after the work for adding the signs was complete, DPW's DDOT's sign department did not put down the appropriate signs and actually gave a shorter length than the school requested, and that various DDOT representatives had agreed to over email and over meetings. And so this resolution is just asking them to honor that original discussion around the pickup drop-off zone and make sure that there's enough space for the 3 school buses on the side and the I think it's 2 or 3 school buses on the front of the school so that kids can get to and from the buses safely. And I have a couple of diagrams because I love a diagram. So you can see in diagram 2, the green is what DDOT agreed to in a meeting and in emails, and the red is what they actually implemented with the signs. And it's much smaller than we need. And the school is very frustrated by this. I know the safety, I think it's the safety technician. I cannot remember the title of the folks that are the crossing guards and help move the traffic along in the morning and afternoons, but they also agree that this is a big problem and really want to get this resolved as soon as possible.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions? Comments? I have.
Oh, yeah, I meant
Yeah.
to not have contractors there. I think I just forgot to update that.
Well,
that should just say by the DDOT signage department.
So do you mind just saying exactly what you're looking for?
What procedures does DDOT have in place to assess the work done by the DDOT sign department? I don't know if there's a better name for that department. DDOT sign department. I will drop it in the chat too.
The DDOT department.
Sign between DDOT and. Oh, that works too. And then I would just use that same DDOT department in charge of placing signage language in where it says contractors in line 3.
The only thing that I would also point out is that they'll have any conversation you want, but then it stimulates for DDOT to actually come out and do an investigation. And so I think it might be worth asking, and I'm offering a friendly amendment if the commissioner will accept it, to ask the question like, can DDOT please release a copy of the DDOT investigators report and their findings for articulating what the signage parameters should be?
Yep.
And we can clean that up, but. All right. Commissioners, any other comments, questions, friendly amendments? Seeing none, I will go to the community. Members of the community, if you are interested in providing a comment or asking a question with respect to the resolution before us, please raise your hand or dial *9. All right, seeing none, with no further questions, I'll accept a motion to adopt the resolution. I'm sorry, adopt the letter requesting for the PUDO zone at School Without Walls, Francis Stevens, to be fixed to the originally requested area. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion with unanimous consent that we adopt the letter as written.
Any dissent? All right. Hearing none, the motion passes and the letter is accepted or adopted. All right. Stop sharing.
And the last thing I'll note is just that the committee's next meeting is next Wednesday. So that is Wednesday, October 4th at 7 p.m. via Zoom.
My computer is doing something funky. Give me 1 second. There we go. All right. Can you see my screen again?
Yes.
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 Great. All right. Thank you, Commissioner Jacobson. Next, we will move to Zoning and Economic Development Committee. As mentioned before, Commissioner Gallagher is unable to join us today, and so I will turn it over to Commissioner Ray.
Thank you. Happy to take this on. We have 3 cases that the committee heard over the course of our break. Even though we were on break, the ANC continues to do its work, and we did have committee meetings during that time. Each of these is in my SMD. It's in 1E03. 2 of them are Kenyon Street, 722 Kenyon, 745 Kenyon, and the other is on 727 Irving. In all the cases, the primary focus is on an addition in the back and a pop-up on the top. So you'll be seeing, I don't know if we're going to show the plans or not. I don't think we have to. I can talk to them via their resolution. So if someone can bring up the document on 722 Kenyon or the plans, however you want to discuss them. And I should say that in all 3 cases, the committee was in support of the application, having gotten changes made. So in the first case, the ANC did request that some additional outreach to the neighboring property owners be done because the applicant had not yet spoken to some of the immediate neighbors on both sides. Because these are additions that go back quite a ways, if you're familiar with the 700 blocks of this neighborhood, I live on the 700 block of the neighborhoods, they're very deep. Some of the houses may only be 30 feet, but their property lines could come back 100, 120 further. So in these cases, we're allowed to build up to 80% of the lot, but it requires that there be a review when the home is going to be, the addition is going to go beyond 10 feet past the neighboring properties. And all of 3 projects that we're going to be discussing tonight, all 3 were going beyond the 10-foot rule. And so that's the change, or I'm sorry, that's not the change. That is the question of the primary question of relief. So in this particular case, the ANC did review the plans and the elevations that are currently in ISIS. They're there as an exhibit, and it's number 27 is the one that we reviewed. We had no particular concerns because this particular applicant had everything that we needed that evening. They also provided shadow studies that showed how the shadows would fall on the neighboring properties. And in the case of this one, there's been a tree in the backyard. It's not a special tree or a tree that has to be kept, but they are going to work on trying to keep it as part of the courtyard. They had an arborist come and look at it. It's not in particularly great shape, but they are going to work around it and see how it goes. So they did, but they did bring somebody in. Ultimately, we recommended approval of the relief as we did not feel that the impacts to the neighboring properties would be undue. We felt that their use of courtyards, all 3 projects are using a space between 2 buildings that allows more light and air to travel between those buildings and to fall onto the neighboring properties depending on the time of day and the season. So though the use of those courtyards we felt is a helpful mitigating factor when you're looking at light and air, which is one of the primary questions that the BZA has when looking at additions that go beyond the 10-foot rule. So given that, the committee was in support and voted in support, and I can answer any questions if anyone has. This is again for 722 Kenyon Street.
Questions, comments, commissioners? Quick question. So in their outreach, it resulted in letters of support being added to the record?
That is correct.
That's great.
And by the record, I mean in the BZA's ISIS system. So that's the central repository of all the plans and documents that are associated with these BZA cases. So if anybody wants to see those things, you can search for BZA ISIS, IZIS. It's not a great acronym these days. We try not to refer to it as ISIS, but that's where all these documents can be located online and are accessible to the public.
Awesome. Thank you. Members of the public, any questions or comments with respect to 722 Kenyon Street? right, seeing none. And with no further questions, I'll now accept a motion to adopt the resolution supporting a zoning adjustment request for 722 Kenyon Street Northwest, which is also BZA 20957.
I make a motion with unanimous consent that we adopt this resolution supporting this adjustment request as written. With you, I think I said with unanimous consent, but if I didn't, I'll end my sentence with that too.
Any dissent? All right, hearing none, the motion passes and the resolution is adopted. And stop sharing and move to the next one. All right.
Ready?
Yep. Can you see my
Okay.
screen?
Yeah, although you could make it all the way. The other one I could see the whole thing at one time. That was kind of helpful. Thank you. So this one is for 745 Kenyon Street. So it's I believe just across the street from the other. The one thing I would also point out is that anybody that is interested in seeing these plans or seeing these discussions, they can find them on our YouTube channel. The link to our YouTube channel is off of our main website, which is anc1e.org or .com. .org is the direct one. And so you can actually view, all of our meetings, including the committee meetings, and see the plans and see what was discussed. Just want to put that out there. In this particular case, we did have some questions. So this applicant came back twice, once to show the plans and then another time to show the changes. We did request some architectural plan design changes, which are now reflected in exhibit number 20 in ISIS. Specifically, we asked that they change some of the facade materials. It was a hardy board kind of design in the beginning, but they put in instead a faux brick facade, which is much more in keeping with the pattern of the other homes that are on that block. We also asked them to change the parapet design. A parapet is that at the roof line, when you're having a roof deck, it is sort of a half wall that kind of keeps you from falling off the edge of the building. Oftentimes they will put them directly on the roof line. This makes the building look a lot taller, but it also kind of puts the person right there at the edge when you're out there. So instead, we have asked them to set that back and to make it a more see-through. They used, in some cases, a railing, in some cases, a glass for all of these. So it helps to make the height of the building not appear to be out of scale with the other buildings that are in that row. So those changes were made. And so therefore, just like the others, this one has a courtyard area that allows the light and air to shine through to the neighboring properties. And so we were in support of that relief in this case as well. Any questions?
Commissioner Ray, was this the property that we had a line of questions about a unique architectural structure around the front door that kind of connected?
Correct. Yes, this one had this particular building currently has sort of an indent. There are two buildings that come together at this point. They indent back from the facades to have their doorways, and so in this case, they will no longer have that effect in the future. And this is the second one actually to remove it. So if that's your question.
Yeah, exactly. I remember one of the things that they were going to do was go back and do a little bit more research on what the precedent was with that, and did they change anything? Was it quite similar to what?
The plan design changed because the request was to also make sure that how everything was aligning with the building, because that other building was also going to be having some changes done, and so they in OP also made the same request, is that their design should show what impact how the buildings now would align. And so it was better to be able to see how the shadows would fall. This one also had shadow studies, I didn't say that. How those shadows would fall, knowing exactly where the back of each building was now going to be, even with the changes that were coming.
Okay. Any questions from commissioners? All right, members of the public, any questions or comments with respect to the recommended approach for 745 Kenyon Street Northwest? Seeing none, with no further questions, I'll now accept a motion around resolution, the resolution supporting zoning adjustment request for 745 Kenyon Street Northwest, also known as BZA case 20971. Is there a motion?
I make a motion with unanimous consent that we adopt the resolution as written.
All right. Any dissent? Hearing none, the motion passes and the resolution is adopted. All right, and one more.
As the chairman is bringing that up, I would point out to the secretary that I believe in at least one of the cases, the hearing is next Wednesday. So we will need to sort of expedite getting the signatures on here. I'm happy to get those uploaded into ISIS. But let me know if I can give any help. I'll take care of the ISIS part if you guys can take care of the signatures.
Yes, I can sign. Well, actually, I don't need to sign this. I think it's just Commissioner Footer.
You are correct. You are correct. So just the votes and the signatures when your eyes are ready. Okay.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen. Thank you. So this one is on 727 Irving Street, directly across the street from the Bruce Monroe Park. It also has again, a addition on both the top and then going back. It uses the courtyard. We reviewed the plans. We did not ask for any additional changes. We did not identify any particular concerns. They had reached out to the neighbors on both sides. In one case, the building is vacant, and the other side, they have a letter of support. So the committee was in support, as I've said prior. We continue to recommend based on not identifying any undue adverse. That, by the way, is the level of review, undue adverse effects, not just adverse effects, but undue adverse effects, which were demonstrated by the use of shadow studies, the use of the courtyards in order to get additional light and air into the neighboring backyards. Any questions?
Commissioner Jacobson.
Since it seems like there won't be any questions, I wanted to take a moment to thank Commissioner Ray for putting these together, since I know that Commissioner Gallagher wasn't able to be with us. So appreciate Commissioner Ray jumping in and helping us with this.
Oh, not a problem. Happy to do it. And because I haven't had to do it all year. I used to do all these for 1A, but I've been thankful not to have to worry about
it. It's okay. You can miss it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm fine with doing everything.
All right. Well, members of the community, any questions? So please raise your hand. All right. Seeing none and no further questions, I'll now accept a motion to adopt the resolution supporting the zoning adjustment request for 727 Irving Street Northwest, also known as BZA case 20952.
I make a motion with unanimous consent that we adopt the resolution as written.
All right. Is there any dissent? All right. Hearing none, the motion passes and the resolution is adopted. So I am signing. I will, as soon as we are done, I will sign these and send them right over to you.
Just don't forget up there on the members present as well, how many commissioners we had tonight. See it?
Gotcha, for tonight. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thanks.
Done. Thank you for that. All right. Next, we will go to, let me go back to the agenda and just double check what is next on our agenda. All right, so we're still with the Zoning and Economic Development Committee, and we have two settlement agreements. So I'll kick it over to Commissioner Jacobson, and you can do Medusa Lounge, and I will pull that up.
Thank you, Commissioner Footer. This one we had talked about, I think, at a previous meeting. Actually, no, that was just at the ZD meeting a couple times. But this is the settlement agreement with Medusa Lounge. It's on the 2600 block of Georgia Avenue. It's very similar to what we had with Medusa Lounge previously. There are just some additional requests of the establishment around noise mitigation, because there have been noise complaints from neighbors in the past. Those thankfully have gone down over time. And Medusa Lounge also asked to increase their interior hours of entertainment on Thursday and Sunday to be in line with their business hours, since that helps them attract more customers and makes them a more competitive business. And from my conversations with residents, their concerns are really more about the sound that's coming from the venue and not necessarily what is causing the sound. And so interior hours of entertainment essentially allows them to have a DJ playing music. Whereas if they didn't have the interior hours of entertainment, they could just be playing a Spotify playlist at the same amount of sound, or speakers just as loud. So fundamentally, it doesn't really have a difference on the noise that is generated. It just allows them to have DJs and have folks give requests to those DJs. Whereas a Spotify playlist, as an example, would not allow for that. And from talking to the member of the community who has had the most challenges with the sound over the years, before Medusa did a lot of soundproofing over the past 8 months or so, he's okay with this, provided that they continue to work with us on mitigating noise and doing what they can to not cause this person to wake up in the middle of the night.
Great. Any questions for Commissioner Jacobson? All right. Members of the community, any questions with respect to the settlement agreement with Medusa? All right. Seeing none and with no further questions, I'll now accept a motion with respect to settlement agreement with Medusa Lounge located at 2632 Georgia Avenue Northwest.
I make a motion with unanimous consent that we adopt the settlement agreement as written.
Is there any dissent? Hearing none, the motion passes and the settlement agreement is accepted or adopted. All right. And then the next piece is the settlement agreement with W&S Liquor and Deli. I can take this one. So this is in Commissioner Gallagher's district. Unfortunately, he was unable to attend the mediation with ABCA. And so I went in his place, had a very good conversation and addressed some of the issues that the community members had. And we're able to make some compromises on both sides. The two big ones that I'll point out are the hours of operation. They were looking to do hours of operation. The request that they had was from 7 a.m. until midnight, 7 days a week. We were able to get it to opening 9 a.m. and then from Sunday through Wednesday, closing at 10 p.m. and then Thursday through Saturday, they would have midnight. This is closer in line with what other liquor stores or establishments are doing along Georgia Avenue. The other piece was to restrict the sale of single sale and mini bottles. And so they were amenable to that piece. And they were great partners in just having the conversation and making sure that they addressed some of the community heard some of the community's concerns. They're brand new owners taking over this liquor license and actually moving it to a new location, which is just about 2 or 3 storefronts down. But I will stop there and ask if there are any questions. Yes, Commissioner Ray.
Only that, is their signature already on the document?
It is, and unfortunately, it's one that I will probably have to go back to them and ask them to do it on a PDF that we can update.
Okay. Yeah, well, you can actually, well, however you want to do it, that's up to you. I just wanted to, for the public, for the record, to know that they did agree to these things before we got to this meeting. Thank you.
Yes. Mm-hmm. All right. Any other questions from commissioners? All right. Any questions from members of the community? All right. Seeing none, with no further questions, I'll now accept a motion with respect to the settlement agreement with Medusa Lounge. I'm sorry, with W&S Liquor and Deli located at 2651 Georgia Avenue Northwest.
I make a motion with the unanimous consent that we adopt the settlement agreement as written.
Great. Any dissent? All right, hearing none, the motion passes and the resolution is adopted. All right, we will go back to our agenda. They're moving along, team. All right, so that is the last piece of business for the Zoning and Economic Development Committee. I'll just note that the next meeting of the Zoning and Economic Development Committee will be on Wednesday, October 11th at 7 p.m. and more details can be found on ANC1E's website. All right, next we will move on to Public Safety and Engagement Committee, and I'll turn it over to Commissioner Newland.
Thank you, Chair Footer. I think that all 3 of these items did not technically come before the committee, so I will be passing these to other folks as well. So Commissioner Jacobson, I don't know if you wanted to talk through the first resolution for the OUC.
Before we get to that, Commissioner Newland, do you want to just talk about some activities from the committee for this past month in September?
Sure. Yeah. So we had a great meeting. I think it was September 11th. And we had a number of folks join and we had some productive discussions. So Howard University's director of or head of public safety joined us and we talked through some different tactics and ways that we can work together in the coming months to address some of the public safety concerns in the neighborhood, including some possible activations or engagements with the broader community. So we'll continue to kind of brainstorm those and let folks know as those continue to materialize. And then we also had the mayor's office director of nightlife and culture join us to talk about his work, mostly I think in the U Street corridor area, and some of the stuff that he's doing down there in terms of the special task force around enforcement and also mental health help for some folks there. So it was good to hear from both of these, outside guests and encourage other commissioners and members of the public to join in if they want to, explore some of these issues together as we move forward as a committee.
Great, thank you. So Commissioner Jacobson, you want to chat about the resolution with respect to the Office of Unified Communication?
I would love to. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to. Yes, so, and apologies if you hear my cat meowing, let me know. My understanding is that Zoom technology has advanced so much that no one can hear my cat being very annoying to me. So this resolution is around the 911 call center. I think we've all probably heard about issues or have been affected by issues from the 911 call center. The most recent incident affected, I think it was more than 10 dogs at a District Dogs location on Rhode Island Avenue, but there has been long documented issues with dispatchers dispatching EMS to the wrong quadrant of the city, to the wrong address, and things of that nature. And there are a lot of other commissions providing similar resolutions. And then there is a hearing, I think, next Tuesday on OUC and 911. And so I wanted to get this in to provide feedback from 1E. So what this essentially calls for, this top is just laying out the history of failures and some of the concerns that I've heard. Points out the answering performance declining from January to February, and the abandonment rate increasing from August to February. Calls out the auditor's report from 2021 on how the 911 system was not meeting the needs of the community and how they weren't following national standards. There's an additional auditor's report in March of 2023 mentioning that the recommendations from 2021 had not been followed. And then there was a recently enacted Transparency Act requiring some more public reporting of data, the number of shifts operated under minimum staffing levels. And from there, we call out 6 separate items. The first is just making sure that the hearing that is on October 5th includes OUC Director Heather McGaffin and the City Administrator Kevin Donahue, since he has some oversight over OUC. I haven't seen them on the witness list, but it doesn't mean they won't be there, just something for us to mark down. The second is asking the committee on the Judiciary and Public Safety to invite the DC auditor to provide a status update on OUC's implementation on their 2021 recommendations, and asking whether or not implementation transparency have improved since the new director took the leadership at OUC. There is some data missing from the public dashboard for OUC. And this is just calling on the council to ensure that OUC is meeting those transparency requirements and adding those data points to the dashboard. The fourth is around staffing data and asking OUC to publicly report their staffing statistics. And those statistics should have the number of call takers and a few other data points in there. And then if OUC fails to publish this information, asking the council to introduce additional legislation expanding that Transparency Act to require OUC to report on those statistics. The fifth is on the publication of 911 calls and transcripts. So just easing the publication of those recordings or transcripts to the person who made the 911 call as requested. There aren't really any PHI or PI issues if it's the person who made that call. The reason being is there is at least one person that made a phone call around the district dogs deaths that it took them a while to get the transcript and the phone call ultimately released to them, and it caused them a lot of anxiety during that time because they were wondering what they did wrong, and really it was something that OUC did wrong. And there have been instances in the past where people who have called and a loved one had died were not able to get the information that they deserve from the OUC. And then the last piece is asking for an independent 911 task force, and then that should be taken up by the council rather than the mayor, because it seems that the mayor has appointed several people to lead the department that have not met the needs of the community, and I'd rather that the oversight of the task force specifically go through the council. And that is all that I had.
Great. Any questions from commissioners? The only thing that I had was around the, did you take out the implementation of a new system?
Yes, Commissioner Footer and I had talked about the implementation of a new system, and the initial draft had included a piece in there on delaying that implementation. I don't really have the data to say that the delaying of that implementation of a new phone call system would actually impact call times. So I took that out of the draft.
Thank you.
Appreciate the feedback.
Anytime. All right. Any other questions from commissioners? All right, members of the public, any questions with respect to the resolution on regarding OUC? All right, seeing none and with no further questions, sorry, I lost my place in here. I'll now accept a motion with respect to the resolution calling for significant improvements at the Office of Unified Communications and creation of an independent 911 task force. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion with unanimous consent that we adopt the resolution as written.
Great. Is there any dissent? Seeing none, the motion passes and the resolution is adopted. Thank you very much, Commissioner. And then next we have two sponsorship applications. So we're one sponsorship application and one grant application. Commissioner Ray, do you want to take both of these?
Sure, happy to. So the first is for the Columbia Heights Movie Night, which is being organized by ANC 1A at the Harriet Tubman Elementary School, located between Irving and Columbia Road and 11th Street. This is, of course, only one block over from Sherman Avenue, which is the borderline between 1A and 1E. And so they have made the sponsorship request that we, help support this free event that has been ongoing. In fact, they've already had one of them. There are two more coming up. The movies are on Friday nights. And given that I know our residents attend these events just as equally as 1A residents probably are attending these events, that it made some sense that we support it. A lot of the money goes to staffing, not so much the 1A staffing, but to the schools staffing or helping to get it cleaned up after, in the aftermath of these events. So the amount is for the $500. I will say that I think when we make this motion, I will probably ask that we make it contingent upon hearing from the Office of the ANC that ANCs are in fact able to give money to other ANCs. That question came up when I was speaking to the treasurer of 1A. And so obviously I'm not going to write a check if he's not going to cash it. So we'll just play this one by ear. If everyone is in support of it, we can pass it tonight, subject to that approval. And if everything seems like it's going to be okay, then we'll go ahead and move forward with it. But if we hear that this is just some sort of a no-no based on the law, then I can, I'll have that caveat in there for why I didn't write the check. So any questions?
I just want to say thank you for doing this. I think it's a great opportunity for the ANCs to collaborate across the ward, regardless of how much it is. I know 1A has an abundance of cash, and so it may not be about the money. It may be about demonstrating our kind of partnership. So thank you for bringing this together.
Not a problem.
Any questions? Great. Members of the community, any questions? All right, hearing none and with no other questions, I will word this delicately. So I'll now accept a motion with respect to supporting the, sorry, let me correct a minute, the sponsorship application for Columbia Heights Movie Night Series in the amount of $500 with the caveat that we are gained approval to transfer funds to another ANC.
I make a motion with unanimous consent to adopt the sponsorship application with the caveat that we will not send the funds if OANC shares that we cannot send funds to another ANC.
Awesome. Commissioner Jacobson, just for future reference, feel free to say so moved with unanimous consent, and that can save you a little bit of time.
Fair.
All right, is there any dissent? Hearing none, the motion passes and the resolution is adopted. All right, now for the last one. Do you want to start talking about it while I bring it up?
Sure. The second grant application is for the Friends of the Old Soldiers Home. Is, you know, the Armed Forces Retirement Home is also adjacent to 1E along our eastern north border. Again, this is an event where it is mostly attended by people who either live in 1E or to some degree also up in Ward 4 because of the proximity. There are only around 280 residents at the Soldiers Home. So, you know, predominantly the event is attended by our everyday residents. They have made the same request in years past from 1A, and it has been approved. Now, they did make the request for $1,000. I know we've had some preliminary discussions in the past about doing it at $500. You know, I could go either way on this if people have strong feelings. In my budget report, which I'm going to show you here in a few minutes, you will see that we actually have $15,000 in our account at the moment. So it is not a hardship for us to afford the $1,000 if we so choose. But, you know, we have limited these sponsorships in some cases because of that. Now, we'd handle this as a grant, which has to then be for a specific thing. And in this case, it would be for rental of materials like the tents and tables that would happen inside the property where people would be able to take shelter from the sun or be able to pass out food and things like that. That's an expense that the OANC has been able to approve as a grant in the past. So, any other questions? Or thoughts on the 1,000 versus the 500? So we're.
The only thing I'll say is that the event is September 30th, so it is coming up.
Yeah, it is this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would point out that we put 500 up there in the in that part. So I don't. Again, it's up to you guys how you want to do this.
Commissioner Jacobson?
Commissioner Ray, can you remind me how much we had budgeted for grants for this year?
So the total for when we put the grants budget together, we put $2,000. Now, but we had also put in roughly $2,800 into the equipment budget. However, we did not ultimately buy any of that equipment because the Office of the ANC bought the camera systems instead. So I can shuffle money around. The amount of money is not really the question. I mean, in terms of what we can afford, it's one of equity.
Commissioner Ray, would you accept a friendly amendment to increase the amount from 500 to 1,000?
I would accept that friendly amendment. I should also point out that the Friends of group is a registered group. That's another caveat to who we can give money to. We can't give money to individuals. We can only give it to registered groups.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, members of the public, any questions or comments? All right. Seeing none and hearing no other questions, I'll now accept a motion with respect to the grant application for the Friends of the Soldiers Home annual Fall Fun Fest in the amount of $1,000.
So moved with unanimous consent.
All right, is there any dissent? All right, seeing none, the motion passes and the resolution is adopted. All right. Moving right along. I won't pull up the agenda. Well, actually I will, I'm sorry, because I want to give Commissioner Newland anything in closing with your committee?
No, just that our next meeting is going to be Monday, October 9th. So, and please join us if you're interested in this, and happy to have more folks join. Commissioner Ray.
Sorry, I did want to add on because I've kind of hijacked your next one a little bit in that we were approached by some neighbors with particular concerns, particularly here in the Parkview area. So I was able to organize to get the 4th District MPD outreach officer to come to the next meeting, and he will be speaking on the topics of community watch programs and on package theft deterrence. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. All right, now we will go on to ANC 1E budget and kick it over to Treasurer Ray.
I shouldn't have unmuted myself. Yeah, if you could go ahead and pull up first that PDF, or it's not a PDF. It's a.
Would it be helpful to have them side by side?
Sure, that would be, yes, that would be even better if that's doable.
Yeah.
So the first thing that you're going to see is a report on FY23, what we spent and what we still have, and then the next is just a bare bones budget for 24, with the caveat that we can approve expenditures at any time that would then change the budget. I might need to update the budget in order to then reflect those changes, but we are able to do that at any time. So don't feel like these numbers are set in stone.
Can you see? Is this helpful?
Yeah, well, it is for me. I hope I have a very large screen, so I'm hoping everybody else is able to actually read this. So the lower figure, yes, thank you, Commissioner. It shows you the checking account register that we keep up to date with the OANC, and it reflects that we have currently $15,684.27 in the bank. I'm happy to report that number actually ties directly to what the bank account is. That's always helpful. We did receive our full allotment this year that came in 2 tranches. One on 3/8 and the other on 9/8. So we did receive 100% of our typical allotments, and most of the expenses had to do with sort of communications. And then this evening, of course, we've approved 2 more, one grant, 1 sponsorship, and the reimbursements for materials that we purchased for Open Streets and the Hoops for Hope program. So that number will come off the 15,000, but that's less than $1,000. So you get where it's more than 1,000 now, but you get the idea. So on the left-hand side, upper section, those are the 9 categories into which we are able to put money, so that we don't get to create categories. Those are the ones that we get. We had a preliminary discussion at the COW about personnel and direct office costs. So that $2,000 for each of those kind of reflects that we might get some level of support from an intern in the future, and or that we might need to rent a space on occasion in order to have a meeting. Or I should say, if we have to pay to have staff be at a location in order to pay to have a meeting. So that's another thing. I kept the rest of the numbers, honestly, are exactly what they were the last time we approved this. The bank charges have never been $500, but I'm always leery about changing that one. If at some point PNC decides to start charging us a monthly cost, they currently are waiving those monthly charges, but that I don't know if that will be forever. The $50 that you see in petty cash is actually for the security fund. So that will have to get paid in January. I might follow up with the OANC, see if we're able to do that early. One of the things that kind of hinders us is the timing of getting all of that stuff approved while also having ongoing charges. So I'm going to see if we can do that early. And if not, we may want to try to, if we are going to have expenses in January or February, it's good to pay them early so that we don't have that problem. Because it takes a little bit of time for them to get the security fund documentation into place. The purchase of services, that was the logo costs last year. I don't know that we'll have anything like that again, but you never know. I'm open to amendment here because we have $18,740 to spend. That doesn't include what's going to be left over from our current $15,000 budget. So those, I didn't try to carry that over into the new year, but it does carry over. We get to keep all the money. Questions?
And we don't have to allocate all those funds in here. There could be a delta.
Correct. The only requirement is that we have a budget. No one has told me ever that the budget has to be a zero-sum game. So at the moment we are underspending, we're under planning, with the caveat that if in the future we want to spend money on something else, we just have to vote on it. Commissioner Jacobson.
I am personally more in favor of just adding a lot to the grants budget and just doing what we can to give out the grants and sponsorships, because I guess I worry about the situation that other commissions are in where they have, in some cases, more than 100 grand in their bank account, and it's not really doing anything beneficial for the community to be sitting in there. And it's good for us to have savings available, obviously, but we don't need to have a giant bank account just to have a giant bank account.
Do you have a friendly amendment?
I have a friendly amendment to, we have so much money after this year, right? So I don't know, bump it up to 10 grand or something.
I would, what I would say is I just did the quick math. It was a little over $6,000 that I simply did not allocate.
Oh, I misread that then. Yeah, okay.
So if we, so let's just add 6,000 more to the grants, that would take it to 8. And that still gives us the cushion from what's going to carry over either way. And we may not spend the 8, you never know.
The only other recommendation I would probably give is maybe taking 1,000 from here and just increasing the personnel. We don't know how much it's going to be, but I know that we all support the idea of making sure that we can adequately pay whomever is going to be supporting us at least a minimum fair wage, all that. So would it be helpful to maybe make this more like 3,000?
Yeah, I don't have any problem with that either.
Great. All right. Any other questions, comments, friendly amendments? All right, members of the public, any questions or comments with respect to the FY23 budget report or the proposed FY24 budget? All right, seeing none, and no other questions, we're going to do this as a two-parter. So first, I'll now accept a motion in support of the FY23 budget report, which is this. Do I have a motion?
So moved with the unanimous consent. Sorry, yeah, you didn't say pass, did you?
Say it again.
So moved with unanimous consent.
Great. Any dissent? Hearing none, motion passes and the resolution is adopted. And then part 2, I'll accept a motion in support of the resolution approving the ANC 1E FY24 budget?
So moved with unanimous consent.
Great. Any dissent? Right, seeing none, the motion passes and the resolution is adopted. All right. I'm going to pull up our agenda. All right, Treasurer Ray, anything in closing?
The only thing I would close with, I'm realizing that since we did spend more, I believe we spent more than $2,000 in grants in FY23. I'll have to double check that. Well, yeah. Well,
I think we spent
Yeah, it could be
exactly 2
500.
grand.
well, yeah, I'll have to. I will just double. I will make sure to double check that. And if we have to, I'm just pointing it out there for people to understand. If we have to, we might need to revise the 23 budget just to reflect that number. But it's not. We approved it. I just want to be clear. We've approved the spending. The question is whether or not OANC will want me to make the budget now match what we actually spend versus. Anyway, but we'll see. Commissioner Jacobson may be correct in that we ended up at just exactly 2,000. I just want to confirm that.
I think it might be 25.
It could be. And either way, this commission has approved every one of those. That's not a problem. We won't actually write the checks until we're not going to really actually write the check probably until next year. So there's some question as to whether or not that becomes a 23 expense or a 24 expense. So I will let the OANC tell me how they want it dealt with.
Great. And just to be clear, that doesn't negatively impact people that we need to give funds to, right? That's just an administrative thing
No,
we
I
need
don't.
to do.
I don't
Okay.
think this is more of a paperwork exercise and whether or not they want the budget to actually say exactly what got spent. We won't, because it won't be what it got spent. We will have budget items that didn't get spent at all. So I don't know if they're going to ask me to make that change. I'm just putting it out there that if I come back next month and say, hey, we're going to revise 23, this is why.
Would it behoove us just to proactively do it now?
Not necessarily, because I don't want to mess up the numbers and then have to fix it later.
Okay.
Yeah. And like I said, I don't know if they'll count a check I write in October against the 23 budget.
Oh, good point. Okay. All right. Well, with having no other business before the commission, I'll now accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved with unanimous consent.
Right.
I think
Is there any
Commissioner Ray
consent?
said it first.
It doesn't matter.
Robert's rules.
All right. Hearing no dissent, the motion passes and we are adjourned. Just a quick note, ANC will, the next general meeting of the ANC is scheduled for Wednesday, October 25th. And the committee on the whole, the COW, is scheduled for Tuesday, October 17th. The next general meeting will be a hybrid in-person meeting, so please look out for details on our website and other announcements. And ANC 1E activities can be found on our website at anc1e.org. And please feel free to contact any commissioner with any questions. With that, thank you everybody for a productive meeting and have a fantastic night.
Good night, everyone.